Today is an exciting day full of damn fascinating news. We do have some pretty damn bad things, like Nvidia doing a bit of Nvidia. Also, Final Fantasy XVI sales figures, which are interesting. On the good side, some Diablo and a whole bunch more, including the game that has been like absolute digital crack for me over the last 2 days. I've played it for 2 sessions, my playtime is 10 hours. I don't know how I've got anything done. That game is not Diablo 4, but Diablo 4 just got so much better. And I think the primary reason why this is important is it shows that Blizzard is, unlike how they've been in the past, a bit more willing and able to just respond to feedback fairly quickly. One of the big stories of this game initially was that the fastest way to level up was just to blast out regular dungeons, not nightmare dungeons, which are the more endgame sort of thing. So people were blasting those down, and as soon as the community would find the optimal dungeon, Blizzard would hit it with a nerf hammer. They nerfed many dungeons. The community started to become quite angry at the situation. They said, though, that the buffs would come, and here they actually are. I've played this, and I can tell you it feels vastly superior to how the game used to. So, they've significantly increased the XP that you get from doing a nightmare dungeon, for actually completing it, and also for killing monsters in it. The Helltide chests also provide substantially more bonus XP when you open them up, and they've significantly increased the XP for basically the individual whispers that you can do across the board. That's just great. But it's not all, and I think the major thing that really solves one of the largest playability problems of this game is that you can use your Nightmare Dungeon sigils to actually teleport straight to the Nightmare Dungeon that you're going to do. This just means that the open world no longer feels like a sludgy, slow menu, and that is a humongous improvement. Another thing that I think is really important is that they are working on increasing the number of monsters, especially the elite density for endgame content, and they're going to be doing this early on in Season 1. There are, of course, a raft of other things that they've got planned for Season 1 and Season 2. They're pretty much all universally good things. And I've got to say, previously, I was really worried. I thought that if you were going to have to do your renown stuff again, get all your Lilith statues again, and we still had Nightmare Dungeons feeling a bit scuffed, that really it would be a tall order for a new season to actually be interesting to me. Now that this stuff is here, I could actually see myself going to a new season. And I have to imagine that is ultimately exactly the response that Blizzard wants to see. So, good news, and I've actually got more good news because The Pale Beyond is part of the Steam Summer Sale. From now until the Steam Summer Sale is over, it is 20% off, and the Collector's Edition bundle, the digital Collector's Edition that's got the art book and the soundtrack and stuff, that is more than 20% off. I actually only just found out that it is on the Summer Sale now. I missed an email from our publisher. So, yeah, that was a surprise to me this morning when I saw the sales graph look like this and then go up like that for a bit, which was kind of nice. So if you want to support us, that is the best way to support us. We're actually, and I can't go into specifics of the contract, but we're getting near to the next stage of our recoup, which everybody's really happy about. So far, the game has been an absolute success for us and a success for our publisher. Everyone's very happy with it. So if you'd like to support us and play our heroic age of Antarctic exploration inspired narrative survival RPG, then the link is down below. And with that said, let's talk about Nvidia. Yes, to play The Pale Beyond, you're not going to need an RTX card, don't worry. That would be quite a surprise. But the RTX 4060 has came out, and it's pretty clear that it should really be called the RTX 4050, and basically the only thing that you're really getting here is the ability to use DLSS 3. Essentially, that's Nvidia's whole game. Get you to use DLSS 3 so that, at that price point, it's like AMD just doesn't look like a viable option, which of course does raise problems for loads of people. I mean, so many of us actually do rely on DLSS 2 to be able to run our games. So even seeing, I think it was Starfield, that is with AMD, right, as their kind of like lead, and a lot of people are assuming, I believe it is confirmed, that means no DLSS, which for a lot of people means like substantially worse performance, which is unfortunate, especially when I think this game on PC with DLSS would have been even more of a good prospect, purely just because it's 30 FPS on consoles. Whereas if you could maybe do 1080p 60 or 1440p 60 because of DLSS, you would have really liked that. And generally DLSS 2 is better than AMD FSR, and I think DLSS3 is obviously, yeah, kind of leagues ahead because of what it's doing. Anyway, so to go onto this card then, the reason why it should be called the 4050 is because its pure raster performance just isn't where you would expect. It is, I think, like trading blows or like in and around a 3060 Ti, which is not the generational leap that you'd really expect. Now, there are some good things. The power consumption is efficient. The 1080p performance in current games is solid. And yes, it does mean you can get RTX features on an entry-level card, but you do get the compromised performance. What it basically means is this can do 1080p. You'll kind of need DLSS3 with, you know, if you're okay with the frame gen, that is, if you want to be going up to like 1440p. Now, there are downsides. Only a 128-bit memory bus, 8 gigs of VRAM, which is okay for now, but probably not for that long. And yes, this is marginally improved over its predecessor. In fact, yes, the 3060 Ti per, I think it's Linus Media Group's testing and Gamers Nexus's testing. The 3060 Ti actually beats it sometimes. So this is a 299 USD card. If its frame generation performance was what we were basing this off, I think you'd be quite happy with 299. But not every card, or not every game, supports frame generation, and some people don't want frame generation because of the latency that it introduces. So because the raster performance isn't there, it doesn't really feel that good, especially when the seemingly on like pure, you know, non-souped up DLSS performance, the 3060 Ti is like $30 more and is a bit faster. Which really does make me think then, how low can a 4050 Ti go? Is that just going to be like a DLSS 3 box and that's it? Key point here though, it's a moat, right? It is a moat. That's the way that it works. They build a moat around their castle. That moat is called DLSS. And I think you really feel that moat when you go and talk about Starfield, as I said. So, Nvidia, of course, they're having fun with their nom AI, you know, selling all the cards to OpenAI, and I'm sure all the people running those data centers. But as I just mentioned, yeah, AMD is the official partner for Starfield. Now, because both of the new consoles, well, I shouldn't say new anymore, but both of them are running off AMD hardware, that does mean that, yes, AMD will be very much on hand to help you get your solid 30 FPS in Starfield. I'm sure many of you don't want that. I would rather have 60 on PC, which, if you're relying on DLSS, as I mentioned, yeah, not particularly good because AMD is the, and this is how it's written, exclusive PC partner for Starfield. Exclusive. And that pretty much means that we'd likely be relying on FSR2 instead of DLSS, which is particularly bad. I mean, here's from John Linneman. Certainly the Digital Foundry boys are pretty riled up about this, but I can understand why. But John said, you know, if anyone at Bethesda is watching, please ensure DLSS and XeSS are supported. Don't make this another one of those AMD games with lacking features. And that really is the problem. If Team Red means less features, less performance for most gamers, all that's going to do is, unfortunately, kind of further Nvidia dominance. And when Nvidia is as dominant in the market as they are right now, we can obviously see what that means for their pricing strategy, even though, at the end of the day, do they really need to bother selling us puny gamers cards, where probably with the same, like, allocation to the fabs, they can make AI-focused cards that are going to sell for way more money? At the end of the day, is it gaming that made Nvidia's value explode, or is it AI? It's obviously AI, and that stuff is heavily GPU accelerated. Now, still staying within the realm of Bethesda, we do have an incredibly impressive mod. We called it out on the channel last year, and it is Fallout London. Man, this is such a cool project. So much so that multiple people on this mod team actually did get hired by Bethesda, which I'm sure was a little bit tricky for getting the mod out the door. But anyway, they were planning it for Q3 of this year. They've actually decided to delay until Q4 because it gives players more time for Starfield and it gives them more time to playtest and bug fix. That, I think, is the absolute wisest move that they could make. We'll have plenty to do until the game comes out, and I highly recommend you support these modders when the game does come out, because seriously, it is an impressive effort with, I mean, so much great world building, and even looking at just the overall presentation of like the initial sort of gameplay that they showed. It is really quite incredible for a mod project. Okay, to move on to some more stories then, Final Fantasy XVI has sold 3 million copies in its first week. Final Fantasy 15 sold 5 million in its first day. In a way, that may not look good, but it is worth going into. So, this is 3 million sales on a PS5 install base of 38.5 million. Now, FF15, that sold, of course, to a mid-generation Xbox One and PS4 audience. We then have FF7 Remake. That had 3.5 million sales in 3 days, so it did outsell FF16. And that was to a PlayStation 4 audience that at the time was 110 million. And then to look at Final Fantasy 13, this is going way back, it was 1 million sales day one in Japan and 1.8 million shipped. So overall, what can we learn from this? Number one, the PS5 audience is comparatively small, probably not a long-term worry. I think they're obviously expecting this game to have a strong, long tail. Yoshi P discussed basically an 18-month post-launch marketing plan, and of course we can expect this to also have its PC release. And I think certainly since the days of FF13, like, PC's kind of big and strong, right? So I figure it doesn't have too much to worry about in the long term. I will say, though, talking to a few friends, I actually knew some people who didn't even know the game was coming out, but were aware that FF15 was just hyped for years. And I think that's ultimately the thing. FF15 had so many years of like really strong marketing build-up, so much more than FF16, so I'm not really surprised that FF16 has undersold based on those prior games. But certainly, if you think about it, you've got 3 million sales, 38.5 million PS5s. Like, you're sitting around a 10% attachment rate. If the PS5 ever gets to like 100 million, sold, and maybe it won't. Probably the attachment rate will decrease over time as this game is, less new whenever those future PS5s are purchased. But ultimately, I don't think Square Enix are going to end up losing a bunch of money on this one. All right, next, we've got a new genre. The, of course, isometric battle royale MOBA shooter. Does it have extraction elements? Actually, no. So that's the only other buzzword we don't have. But this is interesting because it's 3Craft Games. They're one of the big in this case, it's ex-Riot, ex-Blizzard, ex-Bungie. So that's what the team is comprised of. And the pitch is League of Legends meets Apex meets Smash. A top-down battle royale where MOBA-style ability, management, and team play mixes with the shooting of something like Hyper Light Drifter. So yeah, I suppose they've done all the drugs. To be honest, it seems like a sort of a big, bold notion of a game. Looking at the actual gameplay stuff, I think this is kind of strong. I think this is kind of interesting. I mean, I know that playing League, I just really enjoy the team fights. Something like that that's like a little bit more snappy, I suppose. I could really be into this, I think. So good luck to them. I think this ultimately, though, is the perfect example of a big, venture or kind of like money-backed project that really is trying to be ambitious in terms of the player base that it gets. But finally, for today, we do have the game that's been like crack for me, and that is Dave the Diver. And, suffice to say, it's particularly interesting because you'll know in a few months, obviously our first game is out. I'm now planning stuff around our second game. I'm fairly sure it's going to be set in the same universe as The Pale Beyond. I'll say that much, but no more. But anyway, it was... there's a few elements that are relative to my interest, and though it's not a fishing game. But anyway, I've really enjoyed playing Dave the Diver. It's a fantastic game, and what's interesting is that this is Mint Rocket's first major title. And they are basically the indie arm of Nexon! And you look at Dave the Diver, and it's full high-quality indie game. Released into early access last year, released the 28th of June, you can see a 97% rating from 13.3 thousand people. It's crazy. This game is so good. I think its core loop is really, really fun. And it's just fascinating that this is coming from Mint Rocket, who, by the way, before it was cancelled, I think Dark and Darker was a Mint Rocket project. It's that thing with Dark and Darker. Have they absolutely, done Dark and Darker off the basis of working on a highly, extremely highly similar game at Nexon? Yeah, obviously. It's just one of those things where it's like, I think they're obviously trying to be just legal enough to get away with it, because ultimately I think the people on that team want to make Dark and Darker, not whatever, of course, Nexon ended up doing. Now, it's a bit weird looking at Mint Rocket. The other two things that they have on their website are so much less interesting than Dave the Diver to me. So it is what it is. Final thing I'll say, though, look at this, the Pale Beyond. 20% off. Want to get the other edition, 28% off. Want to get the deluxe soundtrack, 32% off. And boy, howdy is that James knocked that soundtrack out of the park. Yeah, currently on 91 and 91 for our user scores. So cool, almost hitting 1,000. And yeah, that's what's going on. If you'd like to support what we do, then you can pick up the Pale Beyond. It'll get us some money. It'll get Gabe Newell some money. It'll get our publisher some money. So there you go. I mean, hey, think of all the knives. The more copies of the Pale Beyond you buy, the larger Gabe Newell's knife collection can be, because that's totally how it works. All right, that's it for me. Plenty of videos coming up on the channel, so stay tuned. I'll see you next time.